The night sky cracked with lightning, followed by the unrelenting roar of thunder. Rain poured down in sheets, drenching the busy city. Clara Wellington, a billionaire businesswoman whose name was synonymous with power and wealth, sat back in the plush seat of her chauffeured limousine. The tinted windows muffled the storm's fury, but her sharp eyes noticed the people scurrying on the sidewalks, umbrellas tilting and coats soaked through. As the car rolled to a stop at a red light, her gaze fell on a sight that froze her heart. Huddled near the corner of a closed bakery, a boy no older than 16 sat in the cold rain, his thin frame trembling as he held two babies swaddled in worn-out blankets. Their cries were faint but pitiful, almost lost in the storm's roar. The boy's face was pale, his eyes red-rimmed from exhaustion, and yet he shielded the infants with his frail body. Clara felt a pang, a rare sensation for someone who had built walls around her heart. She quickly lowered the car's window, rain splashing inside, and asked her driver to stop. Something about that scene pierced through the armor of her wealth and privilege, awakening a forgotten part of her humanity. Clara stepped out, umbrella in hand, her designer heels sinking slightly into the waterlogged pavement. The boy startled when she approached, his eyes wide with suspicion and fear. He clutched the babies closer, whispering something softly, as if to comfort them. Clara crouched to his level, her voice gentle yet commanding. "Why are you out here in the rain with these little ones?" she asked. The boy's lips trembled before words spilled out. I have nowhere to go, ma'am. Please don't take them away from me. They're all I have." His voice cracked with desperation. Clara's chest tightened. She hadn't expected such raw honesty. She pressed further, and he revealed his name was Daniel, and the twins were his siblings, not his children. Their mother had died just weeks earlier, and their father had disappeared long before that. Left alone, Daniel had tried to care for the infants, but had no money, no home, and no family willing to take them in. He had begged for food on the streets, but the rain had driven away even the most charitable strangers. Clara's heart clenched as she realized she was staring at a child who had been forced into adulthood overnight. Back inside her limousine, Clara struggled with emotions she hadn't felt in years. She had spent decades crafting a life of wealth, luxury, and influence, often turning a blind eye to suffering around her. Yet Daniel's fragile figure haunted her thoughts. For the first time, she questioned the fairness of her world, the glass towers and gilded halls she inhabited versus the cold streets this boy called home. Daniel's words echoed in her mind. "They're all I have." She had once known loss too, though she buried it under empire building and relentless ambition. Clara's driver, sensing her turmoil, asked if they should continue home. Instead, she made a bold decision. "Take us to the Wellington estate." The driver's eyebrows rose in surprise, but he obeyed. Clara glanced at Daniel, who sat nervously opposite her, clutching the babies as though someone might snatch them away. She tried offering a blanket and bottled water, but Daniel hesitated, mistrust in his eyes. It wasn't until the twins began crying again that he finally accepted her help. In that moment, Clara realized the vast gulf between their worlds was bridged by something simple and universal: human need. When the limousine pulled into the sprawling Wellington estate, Daniel gasped. The towering gates opened to reveal gardens illuminated by golden lights and a mansion that looked like it belonged in a dream. Clara noticed his wide eyes but said nothing, guiding him and the babies inside. Warmth enveloped them instantly, the scent of lavender and polished wood filling the air. Maids rushed forward, startled by the sight of their employer drenched from the rain, accompanied by a ragged boy and two crying infants. Clara silenced their murmurs with a raised hand. "Prepare a room. Bring dry clothes, warm milk, and blankets," she instructed firmly. Daniel held the twins tighter, reluctant to let go even as the staff approached. His mistrust made Clara pause. She knelt before him and whispered, "They'll be safe here. I promise." For the first time, Daniel's tense shoulders eased, though he still refused to leave the twins' side. As the maids carried in supplies, Clara felt something stir inside her. She wasn't just offering charity. She was opening her guarded world to 3 lives that had been abandoned by everyone else. The following morning, Clara summoned Daniel to her private study. The boy entered timidly, the babies asleep in the nursery under careful watch. He looked clean now, dressed in simple clothes provided by her staff, though his eyes still carried shadows of fatigue. Clara asked him to share his story in detail. At first hesitant, Daniel eventually opened up. He described his mother's struggles, working menial jobs to provide for her children after their father abandoned them. She had fallen ill, and despite Daniel's efforts to care for her, she passed away in their tiny rented room. Left alone with the twins, Daniel tried to survive. He had knocked on doors, begged distant relatives, even sought help from authorities, but no one cared. One relative had suggested the twins be sent to an orphanage, but Daniel couldn't bear the thought of being separated. Tears welled in his eyes as he said, "I promised Mama I'd take care of them. I can't let them go." Clara, who had grown up in privilege but had once lost her mother young, felt an invisible thread tying her to his pain. She realized his strength was not in his frail body, but in his fierce loyalty. Though Clara appeared calm, Daniel's story unsettled her deeply. Later that night, she sat alone in her room, staring at an old photograph on her nightstand. It showed a younger version of herself, standing beside her late mother, a woman whose warmth had once defined Clara's world. Her mother had died when Clara was still a teenager, leaving her with a father who drowned his grief in business and money. Clara had buried her own loneliness under ambition, determined never to feel powerless again. Yet seeing Daniel triggered memories she had locked away. She recognized in him the same desperate fight for family she had once longed for, but never truly had. For the first time in years, Clara allowed herself to cry, not for her wealth, not for her empire, but for the girl she once was and the boy who now sat under her roof fighting for survival. It dawned on her that perhaps fate had brought Daniel into her life, not just to save him, but to heal parts of herself too. Word of Clara's unusual act soon spread among her wealthy peers. At a charity gala, whispers followed her every step. "Did you hear? Clara Wellington took in a street boy and his siblings. How reckless. What if it tarnishes her reputation? She should have sent them to an orphanage." Clara overheard every cutting remark, but instead of shame, she felt defiance rise within her. When one socialite dared to confront her directly, questioning her decision, Clara responded coolly, "Reputation means nothing if humanity is lost." Yet Daniel, too young to grasp the politics of wealth, felt the weight of these judgments. He feared being a burden, overhearing staff whisper that he didn't belong. His instinct was to run, to take the twins and disappear. But each time he tried, Clara intercepted him gently, assuring him that he and the babies were safe. For the first time, Daniel realized that perhaps she wasn't like the others. Her wealth hadn't blinded her entirely. Weeks passed, and Daniel slowly adjusted to life at the Wellington estate. The twins thrived under the care of nurses and the steady supply of food and medicine. Clara enrolled Daniel in private tutoring, though he struggled to catch up on years of misschooling. Yet just as stability seemed possible, disaster struck. One evening, the twins fell ill with high fevers. Daniel panicked, convinced he was about to lose them like he had lost his mother. He accused the staff of negligence, nearly collapsing from fear. Clara immediately stepped in, arranging the best doctor's money could buy. She stayed up through the night with Daniel, holding his hand as they prayed for the twins' recovery. When the doctors finally declared the babies safe, Daniel broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. Clara embraced him, whispering, "You don't have to carry this burden alone anymore." For Daniel, it was the first time an adult had stood beside him, not above him. In the following months, a bond stronger than wealth or blood formed between Clara, Daniel, and the twins. She became a guardian figure, though not by legal definition yet. Daniel began trusting her enough to share his dreams, that one day he wanted to become a doctor so he could save lives, just as doctors had saved his siblings. Clara, moved by his determination, promised to support him. She arranged scholarships, mentorships, and even began restructuring parts of her empire to fund child welfare initiatives. It wasn't charity anymore. It was personal. Society's whispers faded as people began to see Clara not as a detached billionaire, but as a woman of compassion. For Daniel, the mansion no longer felt like a strange palace. It felt like home. One quiet evening, Clara was going through old documents when she stumbled upon something startling. Daniel's mother's name was listed in a set of employee records from years ago. She had once worked as a junior clerk in one of Clara's companies. Shocked, Clara dug deeper and uncovered that Daniel's father had been unfairly dismissed by corrupt managers, forcing the family into poverty. Her empire, indirectly, had played a role in their suffering. Clara's hands trembled as she realized the depth of the connection. She sought Daniel immediately, tears streaming down her face, and confessed what she had found. Daniel listened, stunned, but instead of anger, he placed a hand on hers and whispered, "Maybe this is why we met. Maybe this was meant to be." Clara wept openly, not just from guilt, but from relief. For the first time in her life, her wealth was no longer just a fortress. It was a bridge to heal, to protect, and to love. Together, Clara, Daniel, and the twins began a new chapter, bound not by circumstance but by choice, by the family they chose to be.